Is Kyle Van Noy the missing piece to the Baltimore Ravens defense? We talk about that and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host here, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here, tuning in and making us your first listen every day on Locked On Ravens. We are free and available all podcasting platforms, including here in video form on YouTube. If you're here watching the show, it's the same show, though, both audio and video form. So if you're an audio listener, thank you for tuning in as well today. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about the Ravens today, as we always do here on the show. But it's a little different because I hope everybody had a good Friday, because it was a busy Friday, wasn't it, for this Ravens team? They signed Melvin Gordon. Kyle Van Noy visits the team. And we're going to be talking about both Van Noy and Melvin Gordon today, also Rashod Bateman and J.K. Dobbins. But talking about first, Kyle Van Noy is the missing piece of this Ravens defense, the final piece of that puzzle in the Ravens defensive room. Then second, we're going to be talking about Melvin Gordon, his analysis, my analysis on the move. If I liked it, if I didn't, we did talk about this a little bit on the live show we did on Friday night. So if you're tuning in after the live show, thank you so much for doing that. And we do go live every time there's a Ravens move, and we'll be going live after every preseason game, every regular season game, hopefully every playoff game, hopefully every Super Bowl game as well that this Ravens team plays. So turn notifications on for that. Then we'll be talking about J.K. Dobbins, Rashod Bateman updates. What's the latest on those guys? So plenty to talk about on the show. Let's first get into Kyle Van Noy, though. At the time of this recording, at least, nothing has happened. The Ravens have not signed him. There hasn't been any movement or news outside of that the Ravens, they visited with him, or the report is that they visited with him. Now, a lot of people, myself included, are excited about this potential. Now, the reason is because we were talking so much about Dawon Smoot, and this could be the move. It's a great, and I thought it would be a really good one. Dawon Smoot is somebody who could have made a lot of sense for the Ravens, but on Friday morning, we got the notification that he was signing back in Jacksonville. So seems like that was a little bit of a leverage play by Dawon Smoot, and maybe something leaked by his agent or something like that to get it out there that, at Jacksonville, if you don't match his price, we're going to go and look at other teams. So Dawon Smoot goes back to Jacksonville. But funny enough, Kyle Van Noy and Dawon Smoot have the same number of sacks over the last 4 seasons at 22.5. Now, I'm excited about Van Noy for multiple reasons. He can play both inside and outside, has inside-outside versatility, but not in the way Dawon Smoot does. Dawon Smoot has the inside-outside versatility in terms of he can play interior defensive line or as an edge rusher. Kyle Van Noy, he can play as an inside linebacker or an outside linebacker. Now, the Ravens don't really need inside linebacker depth, right? They have Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, Trenton Simpson, Malik Harrison, et cetera, et cetera. But it's nice to have the versatility and certain looks you can deploy Kyle Van Noy here, maybe in certain situations that would warrant that. But where I like Van Noy is as a pass rusher, and people are kind of wondering, why would they bring in a Van Noy when Justin Houston is right there? Maybe they go after a Jadeveon Clowney. Why Van Noy? Van Noy is a savvy veteran, 2-time Super Bowl champion. He knows what it takes to win. He is a leader, both on the field and in the locker room, by all accounts. And he's had his fair share of experiences. People look at the resume for Kyle Van Noy, and it might not blow you away as much as like Justin Houston. Justin Houston has a ton of sacks in his career. Kyle Van Noy, 33.5 sacks ever since coming to the league in 2014. Now, part of that is the fact that, particularly in New England, he played mostly inside linebacker. That's where that versatility comes in. Played outside linebacker with the Chargers, played some outside linebacker with the Dolphins, and obviously some in New England as well. But Justin Houston has, all these gaudy 10+ sack seasons. Kyle Van Noy doesn't have that. Over the past 4 seasons, 6.5 sacks, 6 sacks, 5 sacks, 5 sacks. But at this point, he's probably one of the better options for what the Ravens are looking for. And he's not young. Kyle Van Noy is not young. He's 32 years old. But compared to Justin Houston, he's young compared to Justin Houston. And my whole theory about, well, why would they look to go younger when they already have in a guy who is older but is still producing. My thing is that it feels like with Justin Houston, much like we talked about with Calais Campbell for so long, we kind of got to start managing the snaps. And we kind of saw that to an extent where you don't want to have a guy perform super well in the beginning of the season. Well, you do. You want to have him perform really well throughout the entire season, but you don't want to have, great start and then immense fall off. We literally saw that with Justin Houston last year, right? Had 9 sacks before the bye week, was on a tear, was, incredible. And then just kind of fell off a cliff, had 0.5 sacks, missed out on his incentive. You don't want to have that. And now that Justin Houston is a year older, look, I would love Justin Houston back in Baltimore. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it. If that's the move they make, I'd be totally happy. But I'm saying the difference between a Van Noy and a Houston is with Van Noy, the Ravens would be less inclined. I think they'd be less worried about trying to manage snaps early on in the year. Do you only play Justin Houston in certain third down pass rushing situations? Do you keep him on the field for consecutive series at a time? With Kyle Van Noy, you don't have to worry about that as much, if at all. Kyle Van Noy has also been he's not only versatile, he's been very available for the teams he has played on over the last 4 seasons, 17 games, 16 games, 14 games, 15 games going back from 2022 to 2019. So, here and there has, missed a couple of games, but he still is very durable. He has 33.5 career sacks, as I talked about, 470 career tackles as well, 10 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions. So while he, does have the versatility, he's not necessarily a turnover machine, I guess. Does have 1 forced fumble at least in every season since 2018, a career high of 3 forced fumbles in 2019 with the Patriots. But, he's a Belichick guy, comes from a Belichick system. And I think for what the Ravens are looking for right now, obviously you want to have players who contribute in huge ways. They go out there, get as many sacks as they can. But and obviously there are a lot of ifs with the Ravens this year, if Odafe Owe and David Ojabo can produce even to 75% of what I think the ideal expectations are for them, you don't need a Van Noy to go out there and get you 10 sacks. He can be a situational leader who, maybe not as like situational as Justin Houston would be based off of snaps and situations, but someone who goes out there when called upon, makes big plays, timely plays, can be a leader on and off the field for you, because Odafe Owe and David Ojabo hopefully are taking the leaps that we all hope and expect they will. So the reason why Houston had to step up so much last season, not that he wasn't good, not that he couldn't do it. Well, it was because no one else really did in that outside linebacker room. Odafe Owe was not producing the way that we expected him to. David Ojabo wasn't ready yet. Tyus Bowser was still coming back from his injury. There was a lot of, Owe is going to be the guy, and then Owe wasn't the guy. So I think coming into the year, if you remember, I think a lot of people had penciled in Owe had kind of surpassed Justin Houston for a lot of people as that number 1 pass rusher. And then Houston kind of jumped him right back because Owe wasn't producing. So this year, if it is Van Noy, it just makes a lot of sense, because to me, I've said it ever since the Ravens signed Rock Ya-Sin. I have pounded the table to say, yeah, sure, corner's still a need. It will be great if they sign somebody in that room, but who is it? Bryce Callahan, is it Chris Harris Jr.? Who knows? But I've been saying that edge has been the team's biggest need since the Ravens signed Rock Ya-Sin. But just because you essentially cannot be 3 deep at the position. Baltimore seemingly knows that. They've been looking, again, Dewan Smoot, now Kyle Van Noy, Justin Houston. You could make an argument that, hey, even if it's not Kyle Van Noy, if it is a Houston, if it is a Clowney, if it is a Yannick Ngakoue even, that could be like the final piece if the young corners can step up, if Odafe Owe and David Ojabo can take steps, if the young defensive line can do this, that, and the other. But I would really like the Kyle Van Noy signing personally because of the versatility, the production, the age, which is not young, but it's not Justin Houston old, I guess. And that's not a shot at Justin Houston, by the way. Justin Houston's a Locked On Ravens legend here in the Locked On Ravens community. But I do feel like Kyle Van Noy, if the Ravens are to move off of Justin Houston, Kyle Van Noy would be a very nice replacement for him and essentially just give the Ravens another option at pass rusher. That's really what they need right now. Coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be talking a little bit about Melvin Gordon, my analysis on that move, talking about why it's meh. It's kind of a meh move. What's good about it? What's bad about it? We'll talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. It's really important that you get your hires right, and you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn's helped me a ton personally in my life. I have a ton of friends and family members who also have used LinkedIn to find jobs or just look and reference their site for other jobs. Or LinkedIn is a really great tool you can use, and it's super easy to use it, and also create a free job post over on LinkedIn Jobs. You add your job, the purple hashtag hiring framed your LinkedIn profile, spread the word that you're hiring. They have simple tools you can use like screening questions to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can really prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you would like to hire. And starting the year strong, it's really important to do that, and the right team member might be able to help you do that. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to fast about your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here. It's our second segment of Locked On Ravens here on Monday. Kevin Oshek still here with you on a very exciting week, right? This is training camp week. We've waited so long. It's right around the corner. Obviously, training camp's another step here. So we'll, of course, be breaking down training camp content here on Locked On Ravens throughout the rest of this week, obviously previewing it before it kicks off officially, and then getting into the details of what's going on every single weekday. But let's now talk about Melvin Gordon a little bit. If you caught the live show on Friday night, you know kind of where I stand on this. And I want to say it again. The funniest tweet, this is a little backstory, the funniest tweet I ever posted, at least what I personally think, is when the Ravens signed Deshaun Jackson. Of course, everybody hated the move. Everyone's like, why in the world are they doing this? I was like, all right, whatever, I don't care. I found highlights of his longest catches. The first one was from like 2009. And all I said in the tweet was, this is the Ravens' newest wide receiver, Deshaun Jackson. And it was, all the responses were like, these are highlights from the Obama administration. And I was dying. I love that tweet. So now every time the Ravens sign a veteran, I try to go back and find like the oldest highlights I can and be like, oh, it's an absolute steal for the Ravens. So I did that with Melvin Gordon, and some people didn't realize it was a joke. So I wanted to say it was a joke. It was really funny because, look, Wisconsin Melvin Gordon was my guy. He was my guy coming out of that draft class. Obviously Todd Gurley was in that draft class too. I wanted the Ravens to draft Melvin Gordon. Unfortunately, it did not happen. Now Melvin Gordon, he's played for the Chargers, played for Denver, won a Super Bowl on the Kansas City practice squad last year, comes over to the Ravens, and it's a move where I'm just kind of sitting there like, okay, sounds good, I guess. Like, Gordon's not a needle mover to me. It's a move that I kind of give like a C minus. It's a 1-year deal, reportedly up to $3.1 million. And when you hear the up to, usually there's some form of incentives. Now, we don't know the base salary, at least at the time of this recording. Maybe the specs have been updated since this, but right now we don't know, how much of it is guaranteed, how much of it is incentives, what the incentives even are. So that will, I think, give a little more insight. But Gordon is someone who struggles with fumbles. Is actually not a terrible pass catcher out of the backfield. And we do know that Todd Monken, the Ravens have kind of been pumping up. Oh, hey, we're going to, get the running backs more involved in the passing offense, and we're going to make that a big part of the game this year. So Gordon does fit that skill set. Only had 90 attempts, 318 yards, 2 touchdowns last year with Denver. That was 3.5 yards per carry over the course of his career. Obviously, that started in 2015 with the then San Diego Chargers. He's accumulated 1,567 carries and had 6,462 rushing yards, 55 touchdowns. Also, in the receiving department, as I talked about, 309 catches, 2,467 yards, and 14 touchdowns there. Now, the thing with Melvin Gordon, when you think about Melvin Gordon, is the fumbles. And one fumble that sticks out that was not called a fumble, that should have been a fumble, and I'm still mad talking about it, is the one in the 2018 wildcard game, where Gordon, went across the goal line, but the ball came out right before, and the Ravens end up scoring. Marlon Humphrey ends up taking it in for a touchdown, and obviously Melvin Gordon scores on the next play there. And Lamar came back in that game. I remember, he was getting booed. Fans wanted Joe Flacco, and credit to the Ravens for sticking by Lamar, because Lamar and Michael Crabtree almost single-handedly brought them back in that game. But it was a disaster game overall. Remember the turnstile at, what was it, either left tackle or left guard, or one of the, maybe it was right tackle. I kind of blocked that on my mind. But Gordon in that game played a factor. Gordon nowadays, you talk about the fumbles. I looked up, and again, I said this on the live show, for StatMuse, apparently you got to pay for it now. It's like $20 a month or something. It's ridiculous. So I wasn't doing all that, but based off what I could piece together from that, I looked up, most fumbles since 2015. If you're talking about non-quarterbacks are the most fumbles since 2015, which was Melvin Gordon's rookie season. Melvin Gordon leads the league in fumbles by non-quarterback players in that span. 26. He's had 26 career fumbles, and there is no other player non-quarterback wise who has more than that since 2015. He is essentially fumble machine, right? It's not good. He struggled with fumbling the ball, got him benched in Denver multiple times, and that's something that, John Harbaugh doesn't tolerate a bunch, right? Now, we saw the whole thing with J.K. Dobbins and John Harbaugh saying, you got a big heart in there, we love you, but I don't know if it's going to be that way if Melvin Gordon fumbles and makes the team. Now, that's the thing, right? Makes the team. I don't even know if he makes the team this year personally. You have J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. A lot of people when the Melvin Gordon signing happened were saying, well, what does this mean for J.K.? What does this mean for Gus? I don't think it means much of anything, to be honest. Like, if he makes the team, he might just be a game day inactive, another guy. If he misses the roster barely, maybe he's a practice squad guy. Like, that to me wouldn't be shocking overly if the Ravens just decide to have him in training camp, get him acclimated with the team a little bit, cut him right at final cut down day, and then put him on the practice squad as one of their vets there. And maybe they can call him up when they need, maybe Dobbins needs some time off. Maybe Edwards needs some time off. Who knows? Gordon could be a veteran option for you. Still a solid pass catcher out of the backfield. Is not the worst running back in the league, but with all the other guys out there like Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott, some of the others too, kind of leaves you scratching your head where if they wanted a running back to play a bigger role for them, I think they would have maybe gone after one of those guys as opposed to, signing a Melvin Gordon, who I think at this point is probably more likely than not a camp body, a veteran guy in that room. Remember, the room is pretty young overall. They had Mike Davis in that room last year, Kenyon Drake as well. This signing essentially is what Kenyon Drake or Mike Davis was to them last year. Kenyon Drake was obviously much better than Mike Davis was, but that essentially is what it is. A guy who is there in case of emergencies, and whether he makes the roster again is to be determined, but a guy who's there in case of emergencies and just can give you just preseason snaps, honestly. Like, I don't expect J.K. Dobbins to play in the preseason. I don't expect Gus Edwards to play in the preseason. We'll talk about that a little bit coming up in the final part of the show. But if you maybe start with Justice Hill in the preseason games, go to Melvin Gordon in the middle, and then end with Keaton Mitchell, maybe that's what they want to do. And I'm a big Keaton Mitchell guy personally. I love what he brings to the table. I've Dante Demas and Keaton Mitchell. If you've been listening to me, if you're an everydayer, those are my two undrafted free agents. Those are my guys. But I think that right now, Baltimore added someone who is not going to make a huge impact this year. Maybe there are injuries and maybe he has to. But at this point, I'd probably just give the move a C minus. It's just like a meh move to me. Like, some people are saying this is the worst move ever. Melvin Gordon, he's awful. He's terrible. Again, I don't think he's good. Like, I don't think he's good anymore. Like, he's not what he was in his prime. But for somebody who maybe just come in, give you a couple of quality snaps here and there, it's fine, I guess. Like, Kyle Van Noy again. I would be much happier with Kyle Van Noy if that signing happened than I was when Melvin Gordon was signed. So that's where I am with that. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about Rashod Bateman updates, J.K. Dobbins updates, also previewing a bit of training camp. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot still to get to on Locked On Ravens. We're back here rounding out Locked On Ravens here on a Monday. Again, super exciting week here. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you as training camp is, it's right on the horizon. It's coming up. I'm really excited about it. And, football feels like it's been so long. February is such, so far in the past now. Like, where I was in February versus where I am now, it's so long. So now that we have a training camp now right there now, it's exciting. But let's first talk about the updates to Rashod Bateman and J.K. Dobbins. We got, word on Friday. It wasn't just Van Noy. It wasn't just Melvin Gordon. The Ravens placed 7 players on different injury lists, 5 on the PUP list, and a couple on different others. J.K. Dobbins, Patrick Ricard, Mike Thomas, Pepe Williams, those guys. Rashad Nichols were all placed on the PUP list. Tyus Bowser was also placed on a list, and then you had Rashod Bateman, who was placed on the did not report list. And people are kind of, out of everybody who was put on those lists, those 7 guys I just mentioned, people were freaking out about Rashod Bateman and freaking out about J.K. Dobbins. Now, luckily at the end of the article, like the press release the Ravens put out, they said that, hey, Eric DeCosta has spoken to Rashod Bateman and he expects him to be present very, very soon. And on Sunday night or Sunday evening, we got the word that Rashod Bateman was activated from the did not report list. So that in itself is good news. Is he going to be on the field come the first day of training camp? Maybe, maybe not. We know that what happened with him is the cortisone shot in his foot. And we got clarity because I think when that news broke, a lot of people were very worried about what does that mean? Another surgery has to happen to get the screws out. John Harbaugh clarified, I think it was maybe that evening or the day after, or one of the two, that the screws had already come out of Bateman's foot. So Bateman had the screws put into his foot for the surgery, and then he had them taken out. I don't know if they ever said when they were taken out, but they were taken out. And then Bateman was having some discomfort, some pain in that foot after the screws were taken out. So that's where the cortisone shot was. And that's why, he wasn't participating in minicamp and in those workouts. So that was much better news than if the discomfort was happening with the screws in, and then there had to be another procedure or the screws hadn't come out yet, and they had to take him out, and that was that recovery. So that in itself was fine news. Now, the fact that he was then placed on the did not report list, people were like, what does that mean? And everyone was kind of wondering. The fact that he's active, we don't even have to worry about that anymore. The fact that he was activated, that was the good piece of news here. Now, for J.K. Dobbins, there was an update about for the whole running back situation, just very briefly. Obviously, we know Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs did not get long-term deals with the Raiders and the Giants, respectively. So the running backs took to Twitter, and J.K. Dobbins retweeted a bunch of that. We talked about that on Monday's show, and Tuesday's show, I think it was. And there still is a lot of controversy about the position. J.K. Dobbins, again, retweeted those messages, and they ended up reporting, I forget who did it and when it was reported, but there was going to be a Zoom call or a meeting with some of the top running backs. And reportedly, J.K. Dobbins was in that meeting to talk about, and there were probably 10, 15 running backs in the meeting. So not necessarily exclusive, but, some of the top end guys in the league. And we don't really know what that meeting consisted of, if there's going to be any action taken from it, but just an interesting little tidbit, because as we do know, the presumed hold-in with J.K. Dobbins during minicamp, because of the presumed dissatisfaction with his contract, it's not a small piece of news with J.K. Dobbins. So not only that, but the fact that he was placed on the PUP list, they're kind of wondering, well, is he going to be on the – because apparently he did report, but is he actually going to be on the field, or is this going to be another hold-in situation? If I had to guess, and again, I don't have any insight on this, but if I had to guess, purely a guess, I would probably say that he is on the field first day of training camp. And if he's not, it is due to the injury and being on the PUP list, or I'd say when he's first available, because at this point, I don't know if he's going to be activated from the PUP list before training camp starts. So if he's on the list, obviously it's no dice, but by the time he's actually activated from the list, I would anticipate him not doing the whole hold-in thing when it's training camp, because, you're missing out on money at that point. And that is just, I don't know. I don't think J.K. Dobbins would do that, just hold in like that during training camp. But we'll see. It would open up a very interesting interesting battle at the running back position. Speaking of that, obviously with training camp coming up, let's dive into a couple of guys to watch out for. We'll get more in depth on these as the week goes along before training camp starts. But I'm really excited to see what Keaton Mitchell and Anthony Demas, as I talked about, brings to the table. Super excited to also see guys like Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler. What's their role going to be? The left guard competition, that's another one where you got to kind of look at it and say, well, is Solid going to be the guy? Is Ben Cleveland going to step up? What about Daniel Faalele? Defensively, there are a lot of guys, right? Like the young defensive linemen. How is Travis Jones going to look? Justin Matabike and Broderick Washington in bigger roles with Calais Campbell not there. Is there anything to say positively about Lafayette Owe and David Ajabo? I'm certainly expecting so. We saw a lot of that already during OTAs and minicamp. I'm expecting a lot of good things from both of those guys. Inside linebacker-wise, where does Trenton Simpson slot in? Where are they using Trenton Simpson? Where are they using Kyle Hamilton? Even where are they using a guy like Brandon Stevens, right? Geno Stone is someone that cornerback competition as well, with Ardarius Washington and Kaiu Kelly, Jalen Armour Davis, Pepe Williams. Williams is placed on the PUP list, so again, probably not going to see him until that whole injury situation is figured out. But then also, what does the second year of Mike McDonald's defense look like in Baltimore? And what does the first year of Todd Monken's offense look like? The whole thing. And obviously, I'm super excited for Odell. Obviously, Bateman, if he's on the field, super excited for him as well. And Lamar, right? Super excited to see Lamar and figure out kind of where his comfort level is as training camp goes along. There's no quarterback competition in terms of the starter, but the backups, Tyler Huntley, Anthony Brown, Josh Johnson, those guys I think will all be competing a little bit. So it's going to be exciting to kind of figure out where these guys slot in. Obviously, preseason we're going to learn a lot about these guys as well. There are also a couple of undrafted corners that I really like. So maybe a guy or two could make a huge impact during the preseason and make the roster that way. But Todd Monken's offense, they're not going to show everything in training camp, right? Like they're not going to do that. And preseason is very vanilla. You don't show your hand in the preseason because it's just not worth it, right? Those games don't count. Now, if you remember, the Ravens do have that massive preseason winning streak that I think a lot of people are just ready for it to end because it's a storyline every single season. And it's like, oh, the Ravens are such tryhards and they win in the preseason. And I'm like, well, the Ravens, they do the thing that every other team does. They don't play their starters a full 4 quarters every preseason game, but it's not like they're tryharding it or anything. Like the Ravens didn't even play their starters last preseason. They still won the games they played. So not only training camp and the Owings Mills practices, but also the joint practices with the Commanders. That's going to be really big as well, just to figure out, because it gets really boring and tiring and you kind of get fed up with playing the same guys over and over and over again in every practice. So you want to get a taste of new competition, and that's what these joint practices are. So it's really exciting. Again, football has been a long time coming, right? We obviously, MLB's in full swing. The Orioles have kind of made this transition a little bit easier. For basketball, big Denver Nuggets guy, if you don't know. So them winning the championship was huge, and me watching that playoff run. But life is just not the same without football in it. So I'm excited for it to come back here. And of course, again, 5 days per week on Locked On Ravens. We'll be covering it here for you. We'll go live after every Ravens move, every Ravens game. And, even after probably the stadium practice, we'll probably go live after that too. So turn notifications on audio and video form for that. If you're an everydayer, I really appreciate you tuning in every day, listening, supporting. If you're new to the show, I hope you enjoyed. Welcome in, and hopefully you come back. You can subscribe audio and video form, same show. And if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for your support as well. Tell a friend, tell a family member if they're Ravens content. They want that, if they're a Ravens fan or also a fan of an opposing team. But thank you so much for tuning in today to Locked On Ravens. We'll get back here tomorrow. More Ravens content, of course. I'll be sure to stay tuned for that. Plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. See you right back here tomorrow.